A new poll examines how parents feel about public education in America. A new poll out this week is giving us insight into how parents feel about public education in the U.S. It was released by the group Parents Defending Education. Some of the key findings include the following. 52% of parents say they support reducing the size and influence of the U.S. Department of Education. 77% believe the state should have more flexibility on how to run their school districts. Meanwhile, 75% of parents and 72% of Catholic parents oppose school faculty and staff from withholding information about a child's gender identity from parents. And a majority also oppose biological males who identify as females from using female bathrooms and locker rooms. And joining us now to talk more about all this is Michele Exner, a senior advisor for Parents Defending Education. Michele, great to be with you today. Before we get more into the numbers, tell us why this poll was conducted in the first place and what it reveals overall.
Absolutely. So it's a new year, right? It's been a few years since our organization had conducted a poll. And so we want to get a sense of where parents were at, right? What's the sentiment? What are the big issues that they care about? And of course, we started out with the key issues that we were seeing, either through speaking directly with our parents in our network or just seeing what's happening in the news cycle and looking at the things that we're finding ourselves through public records requests. So we looked at things, just as you mentioned, at how gender and race ideology, what parents believe of that being injected into schools. We also saw at what parents, how parents think anti-Semitism has been handled in classrooms, and also, males in female sports and spaces. That's been a huge issue that's dominated headlines, and I know that as a parent, I know that it's an issue that parents care about deeply.
Oh, absolutely. And what else stuck out to you from the findings?
Absolutely. And so one of the big things that we always talk about in our organization is the emphasis that schools should be spending every single hour of the day on core academics, right? I'm talking about math, reading, science, and history. And unfortunately, what we've found over the course of the past couple of years is that that's not been happening, right? Schools are getting away from the fundamentals and focusing on frivolous things that shouldn't matter. Mostly the gender and race ideology that they're injecting in schools, that's really just creating division and hate in classrooms. And at the end of the day, is not helping children meet their academic goals. And so one of the numbers here, we found that 90% of parents agree that focusing on core subject areas such as math, reading, science, and social studies would improve the quality of education. And this was a number that transcends political lines, right? This was similar numbers across Republican, Democrat, and independent voters, and also Catholic voters, right? Believe also 90% that schools should be focusing on these core issues if they want to successfully help children achieve an education.
Yeah, that is so very important. There were a number of questions asked in the polls, including whether parents think that school districts should be required to disclose when they accept money from foreign governments. That said, I think some parents, including myself, are a little bit surprised to learn that their children's school is getting money from another country. What more can you tell us about that, Michele, and how common is that?
Absolutely, right? I think if you would have asked me 2 years ago, I would have thought, no, of course, it's coming from federal or state dollars, right? Our tax dollars that are funding these schools. Well, no, actually, last spring, we published a report from a high school in Fairfax County that showed that high school had gotten at least $1 million from the Chinese Communist Party. And so that kind of struck, well, if that's happening in this one high school, where else is it happening? And so we found that there were about $18 million that had come from the Chinese government that had funneled into schools across America, up to 140 school districts about. And so a huge deal, right? Because China is an adversary of the United States. This is no secret. There is no incentive for them to help American students. And so at the end of the day, this is just it could be seen as another tactic for them to gain influence of the American populace, right? Whether that's intellectual property, right? Intellectual information. So just to give you an example, the high school right here in Fairfax County, they handed over lesson plans, student projects, and information from the school, right? And this was one of the top high schools in America at the time. And just to give you an extent of how bad it was, China actually now has 20 Thomas schools that were essentially copied from our model. That shouldn't be happening. And so that's why we wanted to ask the specific questions. We wanted to find out how parents feel about it. And again, no surprise that parents are concerned about it. They don't believe that our schools should be getting and receiving foreign funding.
No, not at all. Michele, thank you so much for talking to us about all this. We appreciate it. It's really eye-opening.
Thanks so much, Tracy.